Right before our 15th anniversary, my husband said, "I want a divorce, and I'm keeping the house." His family smiled, backing him up. Without a word, I handed him a folder. "You're going to love what my lawyer sent me," I said. His mother screamed, "This can't be happening." As he read it, his smile vanished. Just before our 15th wedding anniversary, my husband, Ethan, sat me down at the kitchen table, his expression as casual as if he were asking what was for dinner. But the words that left his mouth were anything but ordinary. "I want to divorce Laura," he announced, his voice calm and measured. He didn't hesitate, didn't waver. "And I'm keeping the house because you can't afford it," he added. As if it were already decided, like I had no say in my own life. His parents sat beside him, their smug smiles a silent confirmation that this had all been planned in advance. Their complicity was evident in every glance, every slight tilt of their heads. They expected a reaction: anger, tears, maybe even desperate pleading. A scene they could later retell with superiority, shaking their heads at my supposed hysteria. But I gave them none of that. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out a thick folder, and slid it across the table with deliberate ease. My fingers remained steady, my expression unreadable, though my heart pounded in my chest. "Then you're going to love what my attorney sent me this morning," I said, my voice smooth and controlled. Ethan's smirk vanished the moment his eyes skimmed the first page. His mother, always so composed, let out a sharp gasp, her hand flying to her chest as if the words had struck her. His father tensed, gripping the arm of his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. This wasn't how they had imagined things unfolding. For years, Ethan had been siphoning money from our joint account little by little, thinking I wouldn't notice. Every time I questioned a missing transaction or a dwindling balance, he brushed me off with casual excuses. "It's just bills. Unexpected expenses came up. I'll transfer it back." I wanted to believe him, but I wasn't that easy to fool. So I hired a forensic accountant. What I uncovered left me stunned. Ethan had been draining our finances, gambling, making reckless investments, and worst of all, funding another woman's lifestyle. But the real kicker? His parents weren't just aware of it, they were actively involved. They had helped him hide assets, co-signed on his disastrous business ventures, and played their part in covering his tracks. They thought they could push me out, keep everything for themselves and leave me with nothing. But they had made one critical mistake. The house wasn't just Ethan's. When his parents had contributed to the down payment, they made the foolish decision to put their names on the paperwork. That meant I had legal grounds to contest their claim. And with the fraud, the hidden debts, and everything else coming to light, Ethan's position crumbled before my eyes. A heavy silence settled over the room, thick with the weight of reality crashing down on them. Ethan's jaw clenched, his fingers tightening around the folder before he snapped it shut. "This isn't over," he growled, his voice low and seething. I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Oh, sweetheart," I said, standing and smoothing my blouse. "This ended the moment you underestimated me." And with that, I turned and walked away, knowing it was only a matter of time before the house was mine. A few weeks later, Ethan was unraveling. At first it was the messages, a flood of texts swinging wildly between desperate pleas and seething threats. One minute he was begging me to talk, to work something out. The next he was lashing out, accusing me of ruining his life, blaming me for his mistakes. I ignored every single message. Then, late one night, my phone rang. It was my neighbor, sounding uneasy. "Laura, I don't mean to alarm you, but Ethan is at the house." I sat up straight in bed, gripping the phone. "What is he doing there?" There was a pause. "He's throwing your stuff into the yard. Everything. And his parents are with him." My stomach twisted. "Did you call the police?" "Not yet. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to." I clenched my jaw, swinging my legs out of bed. "I'll be right there." The drive to the house was a blur of adrenaline and disbelief, but nothing could have prepared me for the sight that greeted me. My belongings, my sofa, chairs, books, pieces of my life were scattered across the lawn like garbage. Ethan stood on the porch, chest heaving, face twisted in anger. His mother, always the puppet master, barked orders like she was overseeing some kind of hostile takeover. "She doesn't live here anymore," she snapped. "Get rid of everything." His father stood off to the side, looking exhausted, as if he had already accepted the disaster his son had created. I stepped out of my car, gripping my phone. My voice was ice cold. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Ethan spun around, his face flushing red. "You left. That means you abandoned the house." "It's mine now." I let out a slow, measured breath, shaking my head. "You really don't know the law, do you?" I stepped closer, holding up my phone so he could see the screen. "Either way, the police are on their way." His mother's face contorted with fury. "You called them, Laura?" I didn't answer. I just smiled. And right on cue, red and blue lights flashed in the distance. What followed was a flurry of questions, statements, and Ethan scrambling to explain himself. But there was no talking his way out of this one. He had just committed illegal eviction and destruction of property. And yet, he still wasn't done trying to take me down. A few days later, my attorney called with an update. "He's trying to drag this out in court," she said. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Of course he is. He's even claiming you hid money." I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "That's rich. Don't worry," she reassured me. "We have all the records. But he's desperate, Laura. Be prepared for anything." And she was right. The very next day, I got an alert from my bank. Someone had tried to access my account. I didn't need to guess who. Ethan was spiraling, grasping at anything that might hurt me. But what he failed to realize was that I was always one step ahead. I wasn't going to let this slide. With a steady hand, I dialed my attorney's number. "Let's finish this. Freeze everything," I told her, my voice steady, unwavering. "I don't want him touching a single cent." She didn't hesitate. Within hours, Ethan was locked out of every single one of my financial accounts. No more access, no more control, no more siphoning money while looking me in the eye and pretending he wasn't. To make sure he fully understood the situation, I sent him a message. "Nice try. Hope you enjoy explaining fraud to the judge." His response came almost instantly, as if he had been sitting there, phone in hand, waiting for me to react. "You're ruining my life." I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. As I typed back, "No, Ethan, you did that all on your own." I thought that was the end of it. Maybe, just maybe, he would finally realize he had lost. But I had underestimated his ability to sink even lower. Just when I thought he had run out of ways to humiliate himself, he pulled one last desperate move. He moved his mistress into my house. And the worst part, I knew her. Her name was Danielle. I had seen her around before, always lingering just a little too close to Ethan. She was one of those women who laughed at all his dumb jokes, touched his arm like she had every right to, and flashed me those fake little smiles that never quite reached her eyes. A neighbor, one of the good ones, sent me a picture. Ethan and Danielle, standing in the driveway, unloading their suitcases like they were moving into a vacation home they had won in a contest. That was it. He had drained our finances. He had lied. He had cheated. And now, before we were even legally divorced, he had the audacity to bring another woman into my home like I never existed. I forwarded the picture to my attorney immediately. "We need to speed this up," I said. "Patience completely gone." She sighed. "Let him keep making mistakes. He's digging his own grave." Mistakes. Ethan had been making mistakes for years, but now it was time for him to pay for them. Because Ethan wasn't just reckless, he wasn't just a liar, he was a fraud. A few years ago, he had taken out a massive loan in his parents' names. He never told them, never even hinted at it. Instead, he forged their signatures, used their credit, and burned through nearly all the money gambling and making terrible investments. And now that little secret was about to blow up in his face because I made an anonymous call to the bank. 1 week later, his parents received a formal notice along with a lawsuit. The bank was investigating the fraud, and unless they could prove they hadn't taken out the loan themselves, they were on the hook for hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. It didn't take long for them to uncover the truth. And when they did, all hell broke loose. I was sitting in a cafe when my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan's mother. "You did this. I hope you're happy," I smirked, taking a slow sip of my coffee before typing back. "No, Ethan did this. You just covered for him for too long." That night, Ethan called. I ignored it. A moment later another message arrived. "We need to talk, please." I didn't respond. An hour passed before the next one came through. "Daniel left. My parents won't talk to me." And then the final pitiful plea. "Are you happy now?" I leaned back in my chair, staring at the words on my screen, letting them settle over me. For the first time in a long, long time I felt free. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The desperate messages from Ethan kept flooding my phone, each one more frantic than the last. He was grasping at straws, and I couldn't help but feel a certain sense of satisfaction, knowing he was finally starting to feel the weight of his actions. But I stayed silent. His voice had once been a constant in my life, but now, it was nothing more than background noise. Days passed, each one slipping by like sand through my fingers. Then, one evening my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something deep inside me stirred, urging me to pick up. Against my better judgment I answered. It was Ethan's father. "You need to come to the house, Laura." His voice was tight, his words clipped with urgency that immediately put me on edge. I hesitated. Why would I go there? What did he want from me? Why would I do that? "Please," he said again, this time almost pleading, his voice strained under the weight of everything that had happened. "Just come." I didn't know why I said yes, but I did. When I arrived, I barely recognized the place. The once pristine lawn was now overgrown with weeds, the sidewalk cracked and uneven. The front door hung slightly ajar, as if it had been left that way in a hurry, like no one cared enough to fix what had been broken. Stepping inside, I was met with a scene that took my breath away. Furniture was overturned, scattered across the floor. The stale scent of alcohol lingered in the air, mixing with something else I couldn't quite place, something like defeat. The house had always been a reflection of us, a symbol of what we had built. But now it felt empty, lifeless. Ethan was slouched on the couch, a half-empty bottle of liquor sitting on the coffee table, a sad symbol of his downfall. His mother stood near the door, arms crossed, her expression twisted with anger and resentment. His father sat nearby, staring at nothing, as if he had already accepted the destruction around him. I stood there for a long moment, taking it all in before finally speaking. "Why am I here?" Ethan slowly lifted his head, and for the first time in years, I saw something in his eyes I never expected: fear. Raw, unfiltered fear. A feeling he had always been too proud to show. "I lost everything," he whispered, his voice barely breaking the silence. I didn't answer right away. What could I say to a man who had already lost it all? He let out a bitter laugh, one without humor. "Daniel took what was left. My parents are being sued. The house, it's not mine anymore, is it?" I said nothing. Silence hung heavy in the room, but his mother shattered it. "This is your fault," she spat, her eyes burning with anger. I turned to her, my voice calm but sharp, the frustration I had been holding back for months finally breaking free. "My fault? Your son drained our accounts, committed fraud, and moved his mistress into our home." Ethan's voice broke through, hoarse and raw. "She's right, Mom." His mother's eyes widened in shock, the truth finally sinking in. For so long she had defended him, but even she couldn't deny it anymore. Ethan let out a hollow breath, his gaze distant as he surveyed the wreckage around him. "I thought I could just get rid of her," he admitted. "Move on. But now I've lost everything." His mother exploded. "You're just going to give up? Just like that?" Her voice was filled with disbelief and fury, the raw pain of a mother watching her son crumble. Ethan's voice cracked. "What else can I do?" Then, for the first time in all the years I had known him, Ethan's father finally spoke. His words were slow, deliberate, heavy with years of silence. "Maybe it's time you stopped blaming her and started taking responsibility for your own decisions." And just like that, he cut through the layers of denial and self-pity that had surrounded his son for far too long. Ethan's mother stormed out, unwilling to hear another word, leaving behind a trail of anger in her wake. Ethan rubbed his face, the exhaustion weighing him down so heavily it was almost visible. "She's never going to forgive me," he muttered, his voice rough with regret. I met his gaze steady and unwavering. "She'll never forgive you," I corrected, my voice firm yet calm. "Because it's easier for her to hate you than to admit she failed to see who you really are." Ethan didn't argue. He just sat there, staring at the wreckage of his own making. The silence between us was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was the silence of understanding, of knowing this moment had been inevitable for a long time. I glanced around the room, taking in the mess. The house that had once been the center of our life was now just a broken shell, a reflection of everything we had lost. "Are you going to keep fighting in court?" He let out a deep sigh, the weight of the years we spent together pressing down on him. "For what?" "That's the smartest thing you've said in years," I said, shaking my head as a bitter smirk tugged at my lips. A strange sense of irony settled over me. "Funny," Ethan muttered, his voice tinged with self-loathing, "how I only got smart after I lost everything." I reached into my bag, pulled out the final agreement, and slid the papers across the table. "This is the final agreement," I said, my voice measured and steady. "Sign it, and this all ends today." He stared at the papers for a long moment, as if debating whether to fight one last time. But then, with a deep exhale, he picked up the pen. His hand moved slowly, as though the weight of everything he had done was pressing down on him. And just like that, it was over. The house was officially mine. Ethan moved out the next day, his father looking like a man finally free from a dark and heavy chapter of his life. His mother refused to acknowledge me, her pride too wounded to even look in my direction. But at that point, it didn't matter. Danielle disappeared without a trace, taking whatever little Ethan had left before moving on to her next victim. Standing in my now empty house, I let it all sink in. It felt different, quieter somehow. The walls that had once echoed with the sounds of our life together now felt hollow, as if the house itself was mourning what had been lost. But even in the stillness, I felt something else growing inside me. Something lighter. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt like I had won. But all I felt was tired. 15 years spent building a life with someone who threw it all away for greed, for lies, for betrayal. Chasing things that would never fill the emptiness inside him. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt something else too. Hope. For the first time in a long time, I saw the possibility of a future that was truly mine. A future built on my own terms, not defined by the man who once shared my life. I was free, and that freedom, That sense of independence was worth more than anything Ethan had ever taken from me. It was my future now. And that was everything. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.